say to America is be true to what you said on paper. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
And now for our feature presentation.
Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan.
Welcome back to Balls Deep Podcast. We apologize for the delay on new episodes due to the recent very unfortunate murder of George Floyd and the climate in which our country is currently in. We figured it was best to hold off on another episode and give people an opportunity to keep their focus on something more important. Our hearts are heavy due to the fact that Black people in this country cannot live their life without fear or like they belong or that they're not safe amongst the difficulties of dealing with systematic oppression and police brutality.
We at Balls Deep Podcast are in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, and we will be including a few links in the description for those that want to help make a difference. And today, to start off the episode, we're going to be talking about Drew Brees and Roger Goodell's statements and apology. You want to start off, Jovan?
Yeah, to start off with Drew Brees' statement, I've heard a lot of, as soon as it came out, obviously there was a lot of players coming at him and saying a lot of things about him, like clearly negative things. Obviously, the opinion that he had, I don't agree with, and as do most people, not agree with him. I think the biggest issue I had with it was the climate in which we were already in for him to come out and say it rather than just shut up about it. I mean, that can be your opinion about the flag, whether I agree with it or anybody agrees with it or not. You have that. You're entitled to that opinion. But I think for him to say it in this climate and after what just happened and how the country was basically just erupted, for him to come out and say that at this time was kind of a slap in the face to, the Black Lives Matter movement and to, all the Black lives that have been lost.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, by any means, Drew Brees, I don't think he's a bad person. The statement was just bad timing. He also, it's hard to avoid the question because he was asked directly about it, but the simple fact that he just lacked empathy in that situation and just went to jumping into explaining what the flag meant to him, which wasn't even the question, is kind of what's the problem at hand. He could have said something like that he understands where the outrage is coming from and why Kaepernick protested, but he himself could not and go into what the flag means to him and talking about his parents. And I think that if he were to have said it in that way, he wouldn't have got as much backlash for it. But since making that statement, he came out and apologized for making that statement. And a lot of it is because of the backlash that he got, especially from his teammates. And he got the opportunity to talk to his teammates. But it was just bad timing in that instance. And I don't think he's a bad person because he does help the communities in New Orleans that are filled with a lot of minorities and those that are in low poverty neighborhoods. So he does good. And I think his heart was in the right place when he stated that he wanted to be a part of the change. But it was just the fact that he lacked empathy in the moment is what ultimately is why he received so much backlash originally.
I agree. I think like you said, that's probably the biggest issue. I mean, I don't think Drew is a bad person or even racist. I think it has more so to do with just the ignorance of it. I mean, the guy that's a guy who kind of helped rebuild, over in New Orleans after Katrina. So I mean,
Yeah.
you definitely know the kind of heart he has, but it's more so the point of view and like being able to understand. And for him to come out and say that, it's like Kaepernick wasn't meaning to disrespect the flag. It had nothing to do with the flag or the anthem. It had everything to do with police brutality. And I feel like him coming out and saying what he did is kind of just like, after everything that happened, you still missed the point. And I think that was the biggest issue as well. So
To be honest, I'm quite happy that he actually came out and said that, and we kind of use him as an example of like holding people accountable for these things. I mean, and he took it on the chin, and he ultimately came back and apologized for it, and he's trying to help the situation now. Like, he was already in support of it, but he just wasn't in support of the way they were doing it. So, which is understandable from his point of view, but it was just a matter of not everyone is a white male in America. Like, the flag it means different to those of like black descent due to like I think it was Michael Thomas, no, not Michael Thomas, Malcolm Jenkins on the Saints, where he was talking about his grandparents were fighting alongside Drew Brees' grandparents, but when they came home, they weren't welcomed with open arms. They were bashed for being black and things of that nature, which is true. So the meaning of the flag and national anthem means different. It has different meaning to different people, and the fact that he lacked understanding, I feel like, was good, because now those that follow in his footsteps kind of understand, like, hey, it was never about the flag, never about the national anthem. Uh, so let's actually understand the true problems at hand. Like, black people are tired of repeating themselves in a sense. So they need people like Drew Brees, and especially people with his platform, to kind of educate themselves and use their platform to make a difference. And I think now that Drew kind of got the backlash and was educated from his teammates and peers, he kind of is now an advocate for what is soon to be the solution.
yeah, and like I said, I don't think it was everybody coming and saying, oh, with Drew Brees, and he can't have an opinion. Why is he apologizing for his opinion? Oh, it's like, it's not the fact that he has an opinion. It's just the climate that it was in the matter in which it's not him having an opinion that was a problem. It's his lack of understanding of what somebody else's opinion on the matter is. And I mean, it's not really an opinion. It's kind of a fact. I mean, it's at this point, Kaepernick was kneeling for one reason and not the other. Those two things had no correlation, and to put those two things together as if they go together, it's more so to avoid the conversation rather than to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tough conversation to have. I commend those coaches that actually are allowing open forum in these meetings for their players to vent themselves. But well, not but uh, in a way, it was just more so that he now it's a tough conversation to have, but it's just a matter that those players or people that don't want to have that conversation tried to steer the conversation or the meaning of why Kaepernick was protesting to begin with. Like, they automatically made it about the flag and the national anthem or disrespecting the soldiers, when in fact it wasn't about that to begin with. Kaepernick actually worked hand in hand with a Marine to make sure he wasn't disrespecting them by any means in his protest. So those that wanted to talk about the flag instead kind of just wanted to steer the conversation. And I'm just happy that now a lot more people that were against it in the past are more understand it more now, why, or the true meaning why. And that's in a sense why Roger Goodell kind of leading into Roger Goodell, why he came out with his apology or / statement in regards to the situation.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Roger Goodell's statement, which is actually our next topic. So to jump into that, it was kind of different to me than Drew Brees's, because you kind of get the feel after watching Drew Brees on television and watching him play. And obviously, you don't know these people, you don't know their true intentions, but you get the feeling that Drew Brees is sincere, especially considering what he's done for that city. But when you get the NFL statement and video, it almost seems like forced. It looked like
You think?
he was just kind of, yeah, he was just reading word for word what the players told him to say,
Yeah.
but it looked like he was reading it like he was some hostage, like he was reading it off of a piece of paper or being told what to say. It didn't feel sincere. It didn't sound sincere. I hope that it is sincere, or that the NFL sticks to their word and starts to do things to, bring upon that change. But it, like I said, it just seemed like the guy was making a hostage video in his living room, like he was being held at gunpoint to say all this stuff, rather than him actually meaning it and realizing the impact that him and the NFL, standing with the Black Lives Matter movement, the impact that it has on this country. And I don't think he understands that.
Yeah, I found his statement to be a load of crap. Um, it was just nonsense in a sense, because he was saying that he didn't realize the importance, something along the lines that he didn't realize the importance of his players speaking out, but in the past. But they were speaking out because there was an issue, yet you forced them to go or make a rule to where they can't protest on the field. They have to stay in the locker room if they want to protest, which doesn't make any sense. And now he's kind of turning his point of view and saying that he's in support of those players that do want to protest and things like that. And I just feel like, where was this when Kaepernick was trying to speak out on these issues in the past? And yeah, Kaepernick started it all, but there was a lot of more players that were around the league that were doing different protests. Like they were holding arm in arm with one another. They had their fist up. They're like, the NFLPA was preaching to help make change, and now years later you want to realize you were wrong, and things like that, which I just feel like is bullshit. And what made it even worse was the video of the players that was very powerful. I commend those that actually took part in it, because I hope it does truly help make a difference. Just because, like, what if it was them that was at the bad end of those kind of situations that happened with George Floyd or Breonna Taylor or Ahmaud Arbery? Like, those people would essentially care that don't necessarily care right now. I felt like it was powerful, and I read up on that video, and someone within the IT department in the NFL actually went rogue and kind of did that project behind the scenes without anyone's okay. Like, he didn't get an okay on the video. He kind of just messaged Michael Thomas privately on Instagram and messaged him and wanted to see if he could, or if he wanted to take part in the video, and if so, if he could help kind of get round up players to take part in the video. And I heard, based off of articles, like it was rumored that the only reason why Roger Goodell responded to what was going on, which would happen to be like 24 hours after that video came out, was because Patrick Mahomes, who's the future of the NFL or the face of the NFL right now, was a part of that video, and he felt like he had to, which kind of makes sense now, because it seems like he was, like you said, held at gunpoint, because it didn't seem very sincere at all.
Because his cash cow was in the video, so he felt like he had to say something. But
Yeah.
to speak on it, like you said, Kaepernick, like everybody saying, now Kaepernick, get him a job now, get him a job. It's like it feels almost too late. It feels forced. Yeah. It's like it's clear they're jumping on the bandwagon of not wanting to lose fans. And like you said, I heard the same rumors about them realizing Patrick Mahomes is on the video and feeling like they had something to do. When you had probably 6 or 7 other, players in that same video and to hear that, and I don't know how true it is, but to hear that come out and be said, I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. And it makes you realize how little the players actually mean to the NFL.
Yeah, but
And
the ones,
especially the black players. And then for him to say in the video, without the black players, there wouldn't be any NFL. I mean, that in itself kind of speaks to how much it matters to him. It's basically telling me to my face, if we could make this money without the black players, then we wouldn't care. Because to say that is basically to say it's the only reason that this matters to you, when it shouldn't matter to you anyways. Because
yeah, I was actually going to point out that part of his statement as well, just because I felt like that part of his statement was the most powerful, because now yeah, it seems like he was doing it for the money purposes, and if he could, he probably would do it without the black players. But it was the fact that it may impact those that are listening to his statement and not in support of the movement currently. Like, hey, he's right. Like, without these players, we wouldn't be able to have the love of the game that we truly love and adore, which is football. And the fact that that video came out as well and try to put them in those citizens or those typical American, like their position. Like, what if I was held at gunpoint or I had a knee to my neck? Like, would you care then? In a sense, like I just feel like putting 2 and 2 together makes it even more powerful in the end for like the normal person. But like you said, it does seem forced, and I don't know how to really take that statement.
yeah, like I said, it just seems a little too late. Obviously, it's good that the message still gets out there and hopefully gets across, which is the most important part. But at the same, when a message comes out like that and it seems so insincere and so forced, and it's kind of tough to see, because it's like everything you kind of already knew was going behind closed doors, in a sense. It's just kind of comes to light. It shows itself.
Totally agree.
And that's that on that.
Yeah.
You are now tuned in to Balls Deep Podcast, brought to you by the streamers of S-Class and Take Flight Productions.
And now to jump over to the NBA's return on July 31st in Disney World. Devin, let me hear your thoughts on that.
So the NBA is returning with 22 teams. The 16 teams that are currently in the playoff picture, plus 5 from the West, and I know the one from the East being the Washington Wizards. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm happy that basketball is back and they're actually going to play out the season instead of canceling it. This format allows those teams that were on the cusp of the playoff picture to still – it gives them opportunity to play out the 8 games that they plan on playing, like regular season games. Allows them to play those games and fight their way into the playoffs. And it also adds kind of gives every team practice going into the playoffs. Like, they're not just jumping into the playoff picture. Allows them to warm up and have warm-up games in a sense. And what I am a fan of is that these teams are essentially like they have a chance to have a playing game for those that are in the 9th seed. So I know they said if the 8th seed is at least 4 games in advance of the 9th seed or ahead of the 9th seed, that they secured the playoff spot. Whereas if they're, let's say, 3.5 games or less, the 9th seed has opportunity to take that spot with a play-in opportunity. So they'll have a series almost, and the 8th seed only has to win 1 game to secure that spot, whereas the 9th seed would have to win 2 games to secure that spot. So it adds kind of an additional competitive nature to that situation. I hope now that it's centralized in one location that they integrate the conferences from best to worst record, regardless of conference, for the seedings. Just because in the past, like that was recommended, but the one issue has always been traveling. But now that they're in one location, why not do it for this one and only season and kind of test it out? That way, we get the 2 best teams to actually be in the championship, and the best team will ultimately win the whole thing. It kind of changes it up and adds excitement to a season that was almost lost.
I actually really like it, if I'm being honest. I think if you focus too much on trying to get it right, it becomes more difficult, because no matter what the NBA were to do, there's going to be some fan or some players or some teams that aren't happy with the format. So it's kind of difficult, I feel like. But I commend them, for giving, teams opportunities that didn't get the chance for those playoff spots late to still get, those opportunities, especially with there still being, 8 regular season games, and then giving that 9th seed an opportunity to fight for the 8th seed, depending on how far away they are in the games back. I really like that idea, because it's a lot harder when you have 8 games coming back late, having to get back in rhythm. You might not be able to play all that well, but to still get that last ditch effort to get that spot by winning 2 games against the 8th seed, I think is a great idea. But like I said, ultimately, I like it mostly because I'm just happy that basketball's back. But like I said, if you try to please everybody, it's so tough to get a format. So that's why I feel like let's just get it on with. Let's play
Yeah.
basketball so my Lakers can win this championship, and I'm gonna be happy.
Yeah, I'm just interested to see how everything works out after the season, because the Game 7 would be played in, I think, mid-October, and next season would have to start on Christmas Day, which means the offseason is very short. So I'm interested to see how that works out. But in regards to the regular season games, I'm just happy that they're allowing these teams to get back into rhythm. But it's also to help them, because they're trying to hit the 70 games mark, so that they can get their TV money for this year. But that would have also a long-term effect for future years as well. And they're also, instead of using the record to determine seeding, I think they're using their win percentage, because not every team has the same amount of games played, which is interesting, and that's honestly the most fair way to do it at this point.
Yeah, like you said, talking about the short season next season, having to start on Christmas Day and ending in October. I've heard talk about them maybe probably shortening next season to kind of, offset what obviously has happened this year. So,
Yeah.
like you said, I'm curious to see what they choose to do with it. But I'm just excited that basketball's back.
Excited, yes. Go Lakers!
Go Lakers, baby!
All right. Well, that's that. We're actually going to move on and talk about ESPN's new 30 for 30 on Bruce Lee. It's called Be Water. So if you want to go watch that, I recommend it. It's on ESPN Plus. But we just felt like we needed to talk about it because Bruce Lee, his impact on the sport of mixed martial arts and his influence on fighters now, which is why the UFC ultimately is either they already inducted him or they plan on inducting him into their Hall of Fame. So it's just we felt like it was needed to talk about it and kind of just go over it. So, Jovan, to start it off, like, what you think about it?
Um, it was a good documentary, obviously. I just obviously leading up to it, I wasn't 100% sure exactly what it was gonna be about in terms of like Bruce Lee. Um, I thought it was great though. Seeing him speak of the prejudice and poor portrayal of the Chinese in Hollywood, which is something that I didn't really know existed. Obviously, there's prejudice everywhere and stuff like that. But that's just something I was unaware of. Especially considering me being born in '97. That's not something that I really to see. Um, but just seeing him be able to try to fight for that and like fight for there to be big Chinese or even just Asian actors in Hollywood, and see that the impact that he had on kung fu and like kung fu films and films in general was great. But it was a lot of it was a lot about his film career, and I would have just liked to see a little bit more about like his mixed martial arts impact and how he inspired like different fighting styles by implementing you know things from different arts. He obviously got a lot of stuff from Muhammad Ali and other martial arts, so it would have just been nice to see how he had impacted mixed martial arts we have today, like you said, UFC, by the way he implemented a whole bunch of different styles in his own. So I would have just liked to see that a bit more, because this was really, vastly about his filming career. But overall, I thought it was a great documentary. Learned a lot of things that I didn't know about.
For me, growing up, I knew of the legend Bruce Lee. I personally didn't know a lot about him. I know what I did know was from my uncle, because my uncle is a huge Bruce Lee fan. So he was always telling me about him and basically saying how badass he was. Um, so this film was more like an introduction to me, because it was kind of cool to see uh, his background and where he came from and what he went through throughout his life. Yeah, it was more focused on his film career, but it also just shows his impact, not only in the film industry or movie industry, but his impact on mixed martial arts in a sense. Uh, it was just cool. I mean, it sucked because like it was clear like he faced blatant discrimination in Hollywood. Just despite that, like the obvious expertise that he had. Because I know he grew up as an actor in Hong Kong, and although he was born here, and when he returned at the age of 18, it was during the times of like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. So he was dealing with similar discrimination, especially in the industry, because within the cinematic universe, like they were using white people to play Asian people instead of actually investing in their own Asian actors. And a lot of it was more like they were using like generalizations of these Asian people, and they were kind of going on that, and it was giving Asian people like a bad rep. And ultimately, like with that discrimination, like Bruce Lee was unable to kind of getting a star role within Hollywood, and he was only able to get a sidekick role within a TV show, and that TV show he got like very little lines, and he got underpaid
Green Hornet.
like he got underpaid like approximately like 5 times less than the star role.
Yeah, I believe I remember the numbers being he made 450. I don't know if this was per episode or not, but it was 450, and then I believe the other actor was 1200 or 2200. So
Yeah, he was making a lot less, and he wasn't given that much lines, so he couldn't even break through and kind of make that influence. He had to kind of pick up and go back to Hong Kong in order to get his film career off the ground and get noticed by Hollywood, and kind of allow them to take him serious. Because I know before he left, he approached these Hollywood directors about an idea where it was, I think, about a monk, and they loved the idea, but instead of giving him the role, they wanted a white person to play the star role, which is messed up in a sense, but because they stole part of his prime in a sense, and part of what the fans could have enjoyed in that time being. Like, he could have got a lot more movies in during his lifetime if it wasn't for the pushback from the industry. And like, the one thing that I have against this documentary, because it was great, was that it was almost propaganda, like similar to the Last Dance documentary. Like you were saying, how like it made Michael Jordan look great and didn't really show really much of his flaws. This one didn't really show much of Bruce Lee's flaws as well. Like, we as fans know that he's not perfect. Especially they touched on it, how like he held up production because he didn't approve of the way the movie they had the movie planned out. Like, he wanted some parts added in that he personally felt like was important. And until then, he didn't really join the cast on like production and start filming. And I think, and he himself even said he wasn't no saint. So I felt like digging more into that would have been cool to kind of just get the background. But the fact that we got the point of view from his wife, his brother, his daughter, his daughter, which is his only living child, because his son Brandon passed away while filming The Crow, and just some of his friends, his close personal friends, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had a close personal relationship with him. Just getting those point of views where I felt like were really cool, and to also like just get his story.
Yeah, I almost don't mind. Obviously, he said himself. He seemed to be like a very man. He said himself, he tries not to get caught up in the stardom, and he hates, the word superstar, and he says he's not as up as others are, but he can still tell you that he's not perfect. But at the same time, I feel like I almost appreciate him more as a person, and obviously his culture meant a lot to him. So I feel like the things that he was, being a pain about were important, because he
Yes.
felt they were things that added substance to the things that he was making.
Yeah.
So I almost don't mind, or not almost, I literally don't mind, you know, him doing that. Obviously, has no effect on me now years later,
Yeah.
but the fact that it adds substance and adds the culture and things that are meaningful to him, and him putting out stuff that he's actually proud of, I think that's important for an actor, especially somebody like him, to do that and to speak up and not allow kind of what was already going on in Hollywood, and that's for it to be just a bunch of you know prejudice and a bunch of things about Chinese people exaggerating the way they look or the way they act and stuff like that. I feel like him doing that adds a little bit to me, and builds on that legacy, just to how great a person he was.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate him more, especially for fighting for what he believed in. I'm not mad that he held up production, because actually I think it made the movie better, because it was his first international film um, as a star role, because that was Enter the Dragon, as Hollywood was actually involved with it because it was Warner Bros. But that actually helped boost the movie to be like the number one movie in Warner Bros. Within 1973. Like, it made I think it was they
93 million, I believe,
yeah, the value
is the
for
number.
today, but
And I believe
back then
no,
it
it was
was
93 million back then, I believe, and I think today was
worth a lot more.
somewhere over
Yeah,
like
so
121
so
million.
so it definitely left a good feel for everybody. Like, everyone adored him, and it just sucks that he died so early, so he was unable to see his impact on the world. Just within that one movie, he made a huge impact, but also like he had like almost a cult and a big following
Yeah.
and a big influence that I wish he was able to see play out as he got older. Because his fight for not only like racism within Hollywood, because they opened up opportunities for other Asian Americans within Hollywood to star in movies, like Jackie Chan, for example. Like Jackie Chan always mentions like his influence on Bruce Lee. I believe he was Bruce Lee's stuntman at one point, which was pretty cool. And he just would kind of emulate the way he acted and behaved. But just his powerful legacy in a sense where when he was making those martial art studios, like he was accepting people no matter what color you were. Like his first student was black. Like he didn't care what you were. He just wanted to educate you on the Chinese culture. And he ultimately not only impacted, like I said in the beginning, like he didn't just impact Hollywood and their discriminations on Asian Americans, but martial arts, because he was able to educate people on kung fu and ultimately like kind of empower them to kind of move and learn mixed martial arts or martial arts, which then led to mixed martial arts.
Yeah. And kind of to add on to what you say, like obviously, very unfortunate that he passed at such a young age and didn't get to, enjoy his prime years in film. Obviously, like you said, it was kind of wasted away. The fact that, weren't allowing him to star in films because he was, a Chinese man. But I think obviously, like as unfortunate as like one of his friends said, it almost adds to the legend. I mean, his first and only international film, probably his biggest film ever, and then dies 10 days before it even premieres. So obviously, you wish you'd got to see more of Bruce Lee, but it, like his friend said, it almost adds to the legend. And I mean, you have such a huge body of work for somebody who lives such a small time. I feel like it kind of shows the impact that he really had on not only his country, but our country and the culture. Like they said, for him, it was all about, bridging the gap. And he was like the perfect person, like, an American born Chinese man who lived a large part of his life in China. And he just kind of bridged the gap of cultures and helped people understand each other more. So I thought that was pretty cool.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.